You know, here at Exotic Car Hacks, we pride ourselves in finding and creating educational content to enable people to enjoy an incredible ownership experience when it comes to exotic cars. And for the last 15 plus years, we have created not only an incredible YouTube channel, but also an incredible community of over 22,000 people geared to help each other ensure not only we don't fall victim to scams, ensure we don't have a bad experience with dealers, and more importantly, ensure we are buying the right cars at the right prices to enjoy them for free. Well, in today's episode of Exotic Car Hacks, we're actually going to talk about some of these scams, specifically about a broker. And we're going to use Andrew Pappas, a broker that actually sells cars on Bring a Trailer, as well as has done cars for quite some time all over the United States with many dealers, and how his specific situation went from being an actual good broker into a scam artist. Now, we're going to talk about Andrew specifically because he stole $30,000 from me, so we're going to use him as a highlight. But through this conversation, we're also going to be talking about what to do to protect yourself if you are using a broker, regardless of what it's for, that is to purchase a car or to sell a car, and what are some of the red flags you need to be looking at as well. So first, let's talk about the scam and how it happened. So I lent Andrew a total of $45,000, and he was supposed to pay me back, of course, because he was doing some kind of split between doing a couple of deals with my money and needed a month to basically float himself. Now, one of the big mistakes in the industry is that when someone has a track record, you tend to trust them. Now, if you don't know Andrew, he's pretty well known in the community of exotic car owners. His name is Andrew Pappas. He resides in California, and he's well known for selling resto mods, and he goes by the name of the Driver 88, THE Driver 88 on Instagram. And as you can see from his profile, he has quite a good amount of followers in the space, especially around older resto modded cars and unique exotic cars. He often posts that he's looking for cars and has in the past done pretty good deals for a lot of people. But after COVID, a lot of brokers obviously made a lot of money, did not know how to manage their money, and as a result ended up, like the word says, a broker is broke. And so this happened to Andrew. Borrowing money to float himself, get a couple of deals. We did a couple of loans for him, back to back through my lending company, did well. And on the last particular loan, he started disappearing, pretending to be sick and pretending to basically no longer be able to pay because he wasn't able to work. But reality was cars were moving on Bring a Trailer, and his account seemed to be getting more popular on there, but yet he didn't actually pay back his loan. So this is quite a bit of a problem because it's a character issue, and in a business where relationship and trust is everything, this is a pretty dangerous game to play. But it got me to actually think that I wasn't the only one that must have gotten scammed, so I posted on Instagram asking if anyone else had gotten scammed, and I've received countless amounts of text messages and DMs telling me that specifically people had sold cars, they hadn't been paid on time, their money was being floated, other people had been sold cars that were dealers and titles were not matching and new titles were not being provided and the person ghosted. So I started realizing that Andrew's deflection, not only having multiple judgments in the state of California against him, but also having all of these random little people saying, hey, I've never gotten my car money, I've never gotten my parts money, I've never gotten my commission, and so on and so forth, propelled me to do a larger video to kind of protect other people from falling victim to this, because this is a person who previously not only had a history of working for a lot of big dealers, but also had done a lot of good business and now started to deflect based on his personal situation of not having money. Many people even came forward saying he had a drug problem that was unverifiable and none of my business. But nonetheless, these kind of issues created a situation where not only I lost money, but many other people are currently or have been owed money and have not been paid or made correct. So the first part of this video is to tell you and warn you to avoid Andrew Pappas at all cost. Avoid the Driver 88. I'm now working on a petition to get him banned and get his account banned from Bring a Trailer as well for deceptive trade practices, and he will have multiple lawsuits against him in the state of California shortly. This isn't about a 30 grand issue. This is more about the broader issue that people are going to lose a lot more than 30 grand if we don't start speaking up when people do us wrong, especially in an industry where trust is everything, right? And reputation is built upon years of good work and can be shattered just like China one time, and it's very hard to bring it back by just doing the wrong thing. So in this case, a character flaw and a warning to all people in the car industry. Now, let's talk about brokers and the 4 specific tips you need to do if you are going to hire a broker to buy or sell a car. So remember that there are 2 types of people you can hire for brokering a car. First, it's a broker dealer. 2, it's an independent broker. Now, these are 2 very different types of people, and picking the right broker is going to matter. So my first tip to you is understand who you're dealing with. If you deal with a dealer broker, it means that a dealership is simply brokering your car. They're not physically buying it first before selling it to someone else. They're simply facilitating a deal. Now, this is very common in the space. People consign their cars all the time, and consignment and brokering is very similar when a dealership is an actual brick and mortar store and has a place to actually list your car, sell your car, and has a dealership license, a dealer's license, enabling them to do transaction bound by the rules of the DMV. That in itself doesn't mean that a dealer cannot rip you off, but that by itself creates one extra layer of protection from a random person who can run away like Andrew, like we discussed. So in this particular case, one of the easiest and best things to do specifically when hiring a broker is to understand that if you're dealing with a dealer broker or an independent broker. On the other side of the coin is the independent broker, an individual who doesn't have to have a dealer's license, who knows a lot of dealerships, a lot of salespeople, a lot of buyers and sellers, and is simply saying that they will represent your car to people and create a transaction for you. Now, usually people that are not dealers, that are independent brokers, either get paid from the party that is doing the transaction for you, where they've had an agreement with them that they will get paid back, or they may have charged you a fee to broker your car. Now, in most cases, most advanced brokers, individuals who are actually good at the space, will exclusively represent your car or exclusively sell your car and will not work as just a person to find your car. One of the red flags in selecting a broker is when an actual independent broker does not have representation of the car and does not have control of the selling party or the buying party, meaning they're simply a salesman on the loose. Those are the worst kind of brokers. And the reason this matters is because they will do their best to hide where the car is. They will try to send you photos so you don't know where to locate the car, so you don't bypass them, because they have no control of the deal at all. They're not actually hired by anyone. They're just a hustler in the middle of a transaction trying to make their bang on the buck. And they're often go around guys that you don't really need to do any business with, because their relationships aren't actually bound by trust and long-term reputation. They're only bound by the fact that they're doing a deal, and they're only as good as their next deal. So warning 1, avoid those guys at all costs, because the word broker, again coming from the word broke, is going to be a lot more of a headache for you, especially if they're asking you to wire money to them or someone else and they don't have any means to be able to facilitate the transaction or actually control the money. Imagine if someone told you to wire their friend because they trusted him, you wired him, and that person now goes, wait, this guy ripped me off, you wired him for a car, I have no control over anything. Oh, well, you got to go deal with him because you didn't wire me money. So this is one of the biggest issues you can put yourself in, and be very, very careful when associating yourself with individuals who nor represent a car exclusively, nor represent a buyer exclusively, meaning that they're just a middle guy, and they're an unknown middle guy, even though other people may have used them, to find cars when you can very easily find these cars yourself. 2, let's talk about the money. The money part of the transaction is probably the most dangerous part of it. You might be directly wiring money because you're paying cash. You might be getting a loan for a car and asking them to forward a check. One of the big red flags as it pertains to brokers is their inability to facilitate a transaction themselves, asking random dealers across the country to do them a favor and do a deal. One of the biggest red flags should be someone asking you to wire money to an account they have no control over at a dealership you may or may not have heard of that doesn't directly hold the car. In most cases, when someone is brokering a car for you, they've identified this car and they have an exclusive agreement to sell this car. It is therefore okay for that car to be sold directly by the owner of the car, and it is also okay for that to be sold by the dealership representing that car, potentially, depending on where the car is. Now, the dealership itself and the person that you're wiring should be vetted by you as much as the broker himself. And while the broker himself may be a representative of a larger dealership group, which is exciting, you should always vet and double check that indeed the car is at the dealership that you are actually paying for. In many cases, people will use this facilitation, and once the money is in, go ahead and go and pick up the car and then do the deal with the seller. The problem when these brokers have no representation of car or buyer or anybody else, as a matter of fact, is that your money is basically called a float. Money goes into a dealership in hopes of getting a deal when a deal isn't yet concluded by the dealership because no one has anything. So one of the biggest red flags should be being asked to wire money to a dealership that is not directly correlated and does not have control of the title or the deal itself. This should be a red flag and should absolutely be something you're careful about sending money to. All right, so our third tip, something quite important, is the title of the vehicle you're dealing with itself. Many times, brokers will not have access to titles, and in many cases, dealerships do. Now, this matters quite a bit because most people, when they find the car they want, get quite excited about the fact that the car is being bought, and then don't really double check or triple check the title itself, who owns the car, who's being wired for the car, and who will be processing the actual paperwork for the car itself. Is there a lien on the car? Is there any kind of probate? Is there kind of an issue with the car itself? Now, you may not know this, but a lot of high-end exotic cars often could be associated with lawsuits, could be associated with ownership rights issues, or could have titles that have yet to be transferred because they're being curbstone, meaning that the person that bought the car might have been a broker that never transferred the title and is now going to sign on behalf of the previous seller, attempting to give you the car to avoid paying the sales tax or getting a dealer's license. You should always get copies of titles of any cars that you're attempting to buy through a broker. And if they don't have access to a title, this in itself should be a red flag that they're not a trusted party by the actual seller themselves enough to get a copy of the title. These are some of the issues that, again, no one is talking about. Brokers who have no access to titles have no rights to any type of cars and have no trust of the selling parties to actually be able to transact on the car. And so it's almost speculative till the very last moment that the money is in, and the money often is going to a place that isn't securing the purchase of a car at that very moment. It is then going to be used to secure the purchase of a car, creating once again a float. So check your titles and ensure you understand who owns the actual car, who has the right to sell that car, and if indeed you are buying the car from the right person. And now, before we get to our fourth tip, let's hear a word from our sponsor, Grailz.
Grailz.com is a reputable online platform specializing in auctioning high-end timepieces. Known for its transparency and security, it provides a reliable way to sell watches online. Focused on smooth transactions, Grailz ensures a secure environment for both buyers and sellers. Prioritizing genuine buyers, the platform offers a premium selling experience for sellers and great deals for buyers on luxury watches. Explore Grailz at Grailz.com for top-notch service in the luxury watch market.
All right, guys, so we are back. Listen, this is our fourth and last tip, and really the conclusion of this video. I may have lost $30,000 and doesn't really matter. What matters the most here is that we are trusting reputation based on very, very far reputation. And so my fourth tip is check recent reputation rather than overall reputation. One of the biggest drawbacks of the industry when it goes through its highest level of high and its lowest level of low because of the COVID pandemic and what occurred in the car and luxury business altogether is that it creates an opportunity for deflectors. Some of the best car dealers can turn some of the worst money managers, and some of the worst car brokers can suddenly get very rich from an influx of clients, only to then realize that they've mismanaged their money like Andrew and end up in a bad situation again. These types of situations mean that the reputation you had post 2020 does unfortunately is going to be very different than the reputation you have between 23 and 24. Often if you check someone's reputation, ask the person that has done business with them, when was the last time they dealt with them? Because we often get people that vouch for people not knowing that their situation has changed. And so my final tip to you here as it pertains to this video is if you're going to be checking the reputation of people or asking for referrals or recommendations from others, ensure you understand the context of the recommendation you're receiving. When was the last time that you actually dealt with this person? What was the transaction itself? Because sometimes we're friends with people and they're very nice to us, but when we deal with money matters, they indeed fall off. So this is a problem, and this is something that people aren't paying attention to because they use overall reputation as a means of current business practice. And this is a big, big flaw in the industry. So to commemorate this video and ensure that you guys, again, are not falling victim to this, I'm going to tag all of the Instagram accounts and separate accounts for Bring a Trailer for Andrew so you guys don't fall victim to that. And secondly, let me know what you think about these 4 descriptions, and if you think they're helpful in avoiding a future problem for many of you guys in the industry or out of the industry attempting to use a broker. Let me know in the comments. Make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And more importantly, if you haven't joined Exotic Car Hacks, remember we have an entire list of blacklisted dealers in the country, individuals you should not be doing business with, and good dealers, dealers who have retained their reputation and continue to work to provide a quality service at a quality price. So these are some of the perks of being an Exotic Car Hacks member. To join, you can actually click the link in the description, and that way you can ensure you never fall victim to people like Andrew ever for any reason, knowing who not to talk to. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you next time for Exotic Car Hacks.